want you to think about this. If Jesus were editing your life, what would he undo? In fact, the series we're doing at church now is called What Would Jesus Not Do, but Undo? What would he kind of look at and go, man, that's got to leave? And we're not left guessing, because over and over again, Jesus talks about changing, undoing, redoing the way we think about certain things. Especially many religious people in his day thought that it was just all about obeying the rules and being born to the right family and just kind of walking through the right hoops, jumping through those, and you're going to be fine. But what many neglected, and we do the same thing, right? We neglect what's going on in our hearts. What are those motivations that we have? Jesus is out to undo those. He's out to undo and to say, look, this is not the way to think, right? Very often he says, you've heard it said this. And all the passages in the sermon series that we're going to do are in that Matthew 5 section, the end of that whole chapter, where he's going, look, you've heard it said this, but I tell you this. In other words, you said it's about not breaking this commandment. Well, because I think it's about what's going on in your heart, which will lead you to break that commandment. And so this whole week we're going to talk about the issue of anger, Jesus undoing that anger. And so what are the other passages? Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31, a really big one. Paul says here, he goes, let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Right? Why should we do all that? Because we've been saved, right? We've been forgiven by God of all of those things. We were his enemies. In the book of Ephesians, he really goes to great lengths to talk about that. When you were dead in your sins and transgressions, right? In all those things, you were all about death. You were all about hurting other people. But what did God do? Because of his great love for you, he gave Jesus to die for you. You're saved by his grace is the word we use, the word that God uses. That means a love you don't deserve. How awesome is that? That's what it is. So again, when you look at anger, it doesn't belong. So he says, get rid of it. Paul is really forceful about this, right? Let it be put away from you. All of those things that hurt you and that hurt others. Now, we often talk about how it hurts others, but it also hurts us, right? Being all about bitterness, that's never a good thing. Wrath, anger, that destroys relationships. Slander destroys relationships. Put all that away. It's, even with malice, right? That sort of, it's kind of a beyond a feeling, isn't malice? It's like, oh man, I really hate that person. I'm going to just go after and get them, right? You know what that feels like. He's like, just no. It's out of place. Now, again, there's some stuff that might anger you, but God says, what are you going to do with that? Now, what we are supposed to do is go to the cross, know that we're forgiven. Say, God, help me to see that I am loved, that I am forgiven, that you have, your anger was taken from me. And so why in the world would I hold my anger over others and just seek to perpetuate it all the time? When God has put all that wrath on Jesus, all that anger, all of his rage against sin and against death, put it on him. He doesn't put it on me. And that should say something to us, something really huge. That should change everything in terms of how we live with each other. So let's take these words to heart today. Let's follow through on what God is calling us to do and say, okay, what are some of those things in life? When do I rage? When am I all about wrath and anger? And how can I again be about grace and truth? All right? Talk to you next time for another follow through.